let's see. How would you describe, let's say you were in an elevator and the Metropolitan Museum the director was there and you had 30 seconds to explain what your painting is like. How would you describe it? What do you do?
Throughout, one advantage, I think, to this talk is that I have so many years to cover. But they've always been grounded in landscapes or physical scenery that I could see. And I've always wanted to move to abstraction. Right. And over the years, I've moved closer and away and closer and away. And the slides that we have will show that, I think.
Right. Well, speaking of that, I'd like to get to the very first slide, because I think that'll give people an idea of how many years we're talking about here.
I really wasn't painting plein air there. I have my snowsuit on, as you can see. I think my mother just wanted to get me out of the house.
Right.
And there was always a big table somewhere.
Well, so when you say you've been painting for many years, I'm going to say your career probably started in the late 50s? You started painting seriously then?
Mid-50s.
Mid-50s,
actually. I always drew as a child. My dad encouraged me to draw, but he wanted me to copy the birds in the Audubon book.
Right.
And
right. And didn't he give you a hard time when you started to go to oil paint? He said that's cheating, right?
Yes.
Why?
I must have had a set one time. I used to paint at night on the kitchen table, and I had a set of, I guess they were casein paints in tubes.
Right.
And I really hadn't seen any oil paintings that I recall, but I put the paint on the branch of the tree and it stood up. And I said, "Oh, I love this." And he says, "No, that's wrong. Oil paint can do that, but you're not supposed to do that with watercolor." So I very disappointed.
Thanks, Dad. Yeah.
But so that was
early, though, and you were a young teenager.
Grammar school
and
so forth.
I wonder if we could sort of set the landscape for people. Okay, so you come from an interesting background, right? We were talking about that. You were born in Pennsylvania,
right?
Adopted
in New Jersey.
Lived in New Jersey. Your stepfather passes away when you're about 19 or so.
Right.
Okay. So, but during that time before he passed away, you had an interest in art in high school, but then you went off to Patterson State University
College.
To be a teacher.
Right.
Was it to be an art teacher?
Yes.
Okay. And how did that go?
Not well.
Really?
One of the things growing up, I heard Christina Strassfield talk about growing up in museums and things. And I grew up 15 minutes from the George Washington Bridge and 1 block from Route 4, which goes to the bridge. I went into the city and saw the Museum of Natural History. I saw the Hayden Planetarium. I never saw an art gallery or an art museum in my life.
That's because your parents just didn't tune into it.
They just weren't aware of. They thought it wasn't for them.
Okay.
I think, I don't know. I was sent to a teacher's college because that's what girls were supposed to do.
Right.
My mother would have preferred that I went to secretarial school.
Right. But your father encouraged you to take the shooting in high school, and
yes,
he wanted you to be
target shooting. That's why I've been a tomboy all my life.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, we used to drive by Patterson State College in Wayne, New Jersey, and my parents would say, "This is where you're going to go to school."
Yeah.
And it was a commuting school, so I'd be living at home and going to school there. When the time came that I went there, it was the first year of their art major program. And two or three of us, two of the girls were in my high school class, but most of the people in the art major were GIs that had come to go to school on the GI Bill in 1958 and 9. And the college said, you don't know what you want to be, you're going to go in the art major program.
Really?
So it was filled with people who just happened to be in the art major program.
So you ended up in there? You ended up in there yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in there because I liked art.
Yeah. But it was there. I'm gonna jump to this one professor that had a big influence on you, I think.
Right.
And his name was Steve Cassell.
Steve Cassell.
Now, can you tell everybody, what was Steve Cassell like, and why was he so important to you and your co-artist friends?
He went home every night and painted. And he tried to give the people that, 5 or 6 of us that he spoke with, a kind of a philosophy background where you're either an idealist or a realist or an experimentalist. And he considered himself an experimentalist. I was always the realist looking for stuff in nature to work from.
Right. Did he give you a hard time about that or no?
No, not at all.
Okay.
He was just an inspiration in that he painted. These classes in Teachers College were about child development, child psychology, how to grade papers and make a graph, anthropology, science, anything but laboratory art classes. We didn't learn any art.
But he was willing to teach a small group of you on his own almost.
Right. And he got fired the year after I was there.
Because he did that.
Because he was getting the kids interested in art, and they were supposed to be interested in their future students.
Now, did he have a beard? Was he kind of like a beatnik? I'm just trying to picture what he looked like.
No, he wasn't.
Really?
He came from the Bronx and commuted every day, as we did.
Did he give you a sense that he believed in your talent? Did he say, you're doing great? Or did he offer any of that? Or
Not really.
was he tough on you?
Not really, no.
No? Okay.
He didn't really teach either. We'd just get together and talk about stuff. But he was really interesting. So.
Well, wait. There was one thing you mentioned the other day when we were talking. Did he teach you to have how would you say it, that the painting should have an overall pervasive quality?
Right, that was one of his things, that he was very interested in the Impressionists, and one thing was very important was experimentation with the paint, and the other was that the finished product should have what he called a pervasive quality. And in a sense,
it's unified. The image as am I right?
I took it to mean the quality of, the image you're working from has an aura about it.
Okay.
It almost hinges on what later became looking at, you can tell that's a de Kooning because it has a quality about it.
It has a language that's his.
Right.
Okay.
So I guess it related to that. It was.
So we're saying now it's about 1958, 59, and if I'm going too slow, just tell me to move it along, but I love talking about it. I know this is early days, all right. We'll move through and we'll get to the juicy stuff in a little bit. But you're in college, and the art world is into abstract expressionism, probably.
We knew nothing of that.
Really?
Nothing.
But what do you...
We didn't go to a gallery in the city. We didn't go to an art museum in the city. Now, Patterson is only 10 more minutes from where I grew up, so it's very easy to go to Manhattan. It was so focused on child psychology.
Right.
And interestingly, the textbook that I recall was written by Victor D'Amico, who opened the barge around that time or shortly before that in Amagansett. And I don't remember anything from that book. I really don't. I mean, the only thing I remember from college was the 3 or 4 people that were interested in painting and this one professor.
Okay.
The rest of it, I was going through the motions and totally oblivious.
Well, what we'll do now is let's get to this next slide.
Slide number 2.
This one here.
Was typical of what we were painting. This one's about 24 by 24. And it was my interpretation of experimentation. I loved glazing one color over another. And
So, Ty, this is from 59, you'd say?
Right.
Okay, and it's oils. And when you discovered oils, you really lit up. You liked that a lot.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Why?
And
Why do you say you loved it? What was it about oils that was so great?
I think it was the building up of layers
Okay.
that,
Right, and then also you like to get some body, I notice, in your work.
yes,
And so there's that.
the body, it was like building up the branch on the tree that was forbidden.
No, it's not.
In fact, what I'm doing now, I'm going back into more abstract, is getting even more texture on the surface than I have in the past.
So this picture that we have up on the screen, didn't you enter this into a show?
Yes, there was a show at the Montclair Art Museum, I guess open juried show or something, and 3 or 4 of us brought our paintings in, and it got into the show. And I thought, this is, I mean, that just blew me away.
Right.
It was almost my first oil painting,
Yeah.
and it got into this show. So
that really gave you a boost
I
of
was
confidence.
hooked.
You were, you were off and running. Now, would you say, so this reminds me a little bit of Rothko, and is this Steve Cassell influence to this kind of style?
somewhat the way he did paint in
chips
stripes and stuff.
Yeah. It's very nice. It holds up over the years.
I
nicely.
did a report in my senior year in high school, and I used a book called Art Since 1945. And there were tons of abstract paintings in that book that I loved, among them Rothko.
I'm going to jump in for a second. What's a nice girl from Paterson, New Jersey, doing loving abstract painting? How did you develop that acquired taste?
I don't know.
You see, that's the
Maybe I
craziest thing.
painted too many Audubon birds in my youth. And I couldn't wait to get away.
Yeah.
The other thing, when I was very little, there was a paint store next to where my father worked, and he was a projectionist in a movie theater. And occasionally I'd go and spend the day with him at work, and we always went to the paint store, and I was allowed to take as many color cards as I wanted. And I think that was color cards. I didn't do anything with them, but
they are beautiful.
I just love that.
Yeah.
So somehow, I don't know.
All right.
I don't know.
So let's get right back into the timeline.
Okay.
We have this picture. It's in the show.
Right.
We try teaching for about 6 months, and then that's it. No teaching for you. Did a student bite you? What happened? Did something? What was it about teaching?
No, I grew up as an only child. I had no siblings. I was overprotected, and I find myself. Well, the school. I dropped out of school. My father passed away. My mother sold the house, and I went to work for Bloomingdale's in Hackensack full time. The school called and said, we desperately need an art teacher in West Milford, New Jersey. And I said, oh, this is what my father would have wanted me to do. So I took the job. I ordered art supplies in August. In September, I started school. And I walked into a class of 30 7th graders. I was terrified. I would have been better in a zoo of lions. I didn't know how to talk to them. I didn't know what, they didn't want to, it wasn't an elective course, so they shot their straws and chocolate syrup on the ceiling, and
Oh, man. And that was it.
I didn't know what I was doing. And I hadn't had any art training. I couldn't teach perspective. I mean, I knew what it was,
Right.
but
So you made a decision.
I lasted 3 weeks.
Okay.
So then my mother, who was all I had, bought her aunt's house in Noyak, Sag Harbor.
Right.
And I said, oh, I'll go out ahead of time and I'll repaint the inside of the house.
Right.
I would do anything to get out of New Jersey. And I did that. When she came out, we didn't get along, so I stayed out there. I got an apartment.
So you say you didn't get along because she didn't like the smell of turpentine?
She didn't like the smell of turpentine.
She didn't like your music?
She didn't like classical music.
Classical music is so hard to take, isn't it? I mean, God.
And she kept saying, but you're such a good typist. Why don't you work as a secretary?
Oh, boy.
And it just wasn't me. So, but when I got to the Hamptons, I went to the Parish Art Museum. I went to Guildhall, and it was like, wow.
So this is like around 62, 63.
Yep, 62.
What's the lay of the land like? What does it look like, and what's the
Very
scene
rural,
like?
all potato farms.
Okay. Must have been. Was it shocking for you to come from Jersey to that, or?
Well, I used to go to the Adirondacks in the summer, so I loved the country.
Okay.
And
So now you're out there. Potato fields
I
very
like
flat.
that. I got a part-time job in a dress shop, and I painted at night
And where was your studio? Above the dress shop?
in where I lived.
No, but did you have an apartment over where
The
you worked?
apartment was over the dress shop.
Okay.
I had several, but that was one, and it was great because it had Pecky cypress walls, and you could put nails and tacks, and nobody knew because it was all this textured wood, open grain wood,
Yeah.
cypress.
Well, do you remember those days as being happy and exciting for you?
It was consistent with my being a hermit.
Oh, really? Were you shy
Yeah,
back then?
I was not into people at all.
Right. Right.
I'm still not, quite
Yeah,
frankly.
yeah, I know.
And the painting got into the Parish Art Museum.
Oh, let's
then
show them that. That
that's
might be the
another
next
painting.
one.
No, this one I did after I moved out there.
Right.
It's starting to get a little landscapey.
Right, so you can see it's changing from the squares and the rectangles, but yet there's a horizon and a sky
This
now.
again isn't very big.
Were you showing these paintings back then?
No.
No, you just make them.
I wasn't aware that you showed paintings and made a living off it.
Yes.
It was almost,
Right.
you know.
That was not part of the deal.
no.
Yeah. I still haven't made a living off of it.
I kind of thought that, you painted until you got into an art museum
Right.
or a book, or I didn't think it was a thing that you sold and made a living out of.
Okay.
At that time, I mean, gradually I became aware.
Was there a vibrant art scene? I mean, you had de Kooning and Pollock who was out there, and did you feel that there was something happening at least?
The first person I met was Mary Abbott, who was very close to de Kooning. She was an abstract expressionist.
How did you meet her?
John McWhinney was another painter younger than I, and his mother was an antique dealer. But they opened a little gallery on Job's Lane, and we all hung out there.
Really?
And Mary talked to me, and she said, oh, there's an invitational in Springs. Give me one of your drawings, and I'll take it over there, which she did. She had a studio in the Ice House at the Lumberyard in Southampton at the time. Fairfield Porter was there.
Didn't you say Fairfield Porter actually went to your studio?
He came to look at what I was doing, which that particular day I was...
Did you know he was coming?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I just
Yeah.
keep thinking he just shows up at your door.
Yeah,
Like
no,
that's the way
no,
it is
no,
out in the Hamptons.
no.
Oh, Fairfield, come on in.
I think it was John McWhinney said, go see what Ty's doing. Unfortunately, I was doing a giant still life at the time,
yeah.
which
Well,
really wasn't his thing. But
well, he was figurative. I could see him sort of. Did he give you any?
No.
Did you give him any tea or anything?
No.
Did you make it? No, okay. All right. Well, there you go. All right. So.
And of course, John McWhinney as well. And for a while, I started very crazy abstracts in the early 70s.
Now, here's a question for you. How do you learn to be an abstract painter? Even back then, how did one approach that? I mean, you weren't getting trained. You were talking to other artists. You were looking at art,
Right.
certainly. But did you have anything to go on, or were you just sort of going from the gut?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I drank a lot while I was painting.
Right. Right.
And that
That helped.
gets rid of your inhibitions. And just, again, some of the crazy ones I showed you, I mean, they are trees, and
Yeah.
they're based on landscapes.
It was like your reaction to what you were looking at, but,
yeah. I mean,
but it was
this
so
is
removed.
obviously a landscape, right?
Right. Right.
I hope.
Right. Yeah.
But
Well, I wouldn't say obvious. Would you say obvious? You'd say, okay, fine. Never mind. Me too.
so it's just loosening up and.
Right. But you don't drink anymore, right? Didn't you say
Not-
that to me?
no,
That
I
stopped.
don't.
Yeah.
I don't. But
Yeah.
I did drink while I was painting in those days.
But back then, everybody drank. Back
Well,
then,
that's
right? That
true.
was like, oh, it's time for a cocktail.
in fact, we're coming to.
Yeah. Should we go to the next
Go
slide?
on to that one.
What is this one all
This
about?
is 44 inches high. I had run out of art supplies, and it was painted on a bed sheet stretched over 1x2s. And you can see the line going up the right
Yeah.
where the wood is pressing on the canvas. I'm afraid to take it off. I think it might crack.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
But it's a landscape-derived thing. Looks kind of like a tree. You'll notice it's signed Clutterbuck,
Yeah.
63.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was my adoptive name. And when I started to make paintings, I became aware that I was making Clutterbucks. And it was a very important identity thing for me. And I was born in Stroudsburg, and I related closer to that than to my adoptive family. So I changed my name in '63, and it became Stroudsburg.
It's a good name.
Anyway, this one I entered in a juried show at the Parish Art Museum, and it got in, and it won some kind of award for abstract or something. And it was kind of the same experience with the Montclair Art Museum. It's like the third painting I've done in my life, and it
Right.
gets into a show, you know.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah.
so, but I love this painting, and I never pursued that look.
Do you think you might?
It was a one of a kind. I think stuff comes back
Yeah.
similar to it. It's a little like a Sam Francis, which I didn't know about then.
What is your way in when you start a painting, especially let's say that one, or even this one? How much do you know what you're doing? How much color do you?
I know what I'm
Yeah.
doing?
How much color do you put out? Do you put out an army of colors, or you just sort of say, I'm feeling
Well,
the greens?
having
right now"?
not gone to art school, which I later saw that people do, I don't put out an assortment of colors
Right.
that I'm going to be using. I have another friend who does color wheel, and she puts out the color wheel
Yeah.
of color. I think.
So you just sort of look at the painting and say, I think it
I'm gonna
needs.
paint. I do a lot of pastel sketches from life sitting in my truck. I used to take a lot of photographs, and I'd get back and I'd say, why did I photograph this? I don't see what I saw so I used to carry the pastels around, pull the truck over and sketch what I saw, and very loosely.
Right.
And then when I would start the painting, I would say, okay, this is the most prevalent color. I'll start with that. And then I add stuff to it, and I just put it on the canvas. And then I said, all right, it needs something else, and I'll add that. And I use disposable palettes. So when it gets too messy or I'm changing to the lighter colors, I tear that off and throw it away and start a whole new palette with maybe just the light colors.
Do you find you like to let the painting have some drying time, so when it's time to pile on lighter colors, they don't dissolve into the previous color? In other words, you need a little drying time between the layers, or you don't think that way?
I don't know.
Okay.
Unless they're really thick, they dry fairly quickly.
Are you using a medium? Do you like to paint with medium?
I use a liquid clear gel a lot. Recently, somebody was using something called resin gel, which you can add that to cadmium red and it'll dry overnight.
Right, and it gives it body?
Yeah. Yeah, very
Okay.
thick.
Wow. Okay. All right, should we go to the next slide?
I guess so.
All right, let's see where we're at.
Okay.
What's going on here?
Now.
What happened here? That's when you realized
I'm out in the Hamptons.
Yeah, I'm in the Hamptons.
I still like my geometry and my horizontal lines. And there's nothing out there in 1963 and 4 but potato fields.
Yeah.
And this is Mecox and Mecox Bay, where the Art Hampton tent, I think, was at the end of this road. There was so much open space. And you could go from Southampton Hospital all the way to Watermill on the back road, and there was one barn. So, bars of color.
Yeah, it must have been beautiful.
And a little imagery. And it just evolved into this. And I had, there was a Peter Lunam gallery in Bridgehampton.
What year are we talking now? 69? We're in 68, 67?
70s, yeah.
Okay.
And he liked my work. I showed there with Frank Wimberly and Priscilla Bowden, who are still present. So little by little, and a woman from a gallery in Florida, Martha Lincoln, lived in Roslyn, Long Island, and saw the work and invited me to have a show in Florida. But she
How'd that
said
go?
it was like the hospital. It couldn't be dark and it couldn't be wintry.
Yeah.
And but in those days, I was using a lot of pink and high tone colors, and
That worked.
so I drove them down there in my truck.
Really?
Stayed with her for 3 weeks, and I drove them back up here. And but
How were you doing in terms of sales back then? I mean, you were
very well, actually. I mean,
Right?
for me, I was still working part-time, and if I sold something, it was, a big surprise.
It was a big deal,
And, again, I wasn't expecting to live on it.
I'd like to jump in and say something. One of the things that impresses me about you, one of the many things, is that you'll do your own stretching, you'll make your own frames.
Right.
You're a can-do kind of a person. You're not afraid to do these things.
Well, I love to do mechanical stuff,
Yeah.
but
Okay, so back then, were you working big, or what was the size back then?
the biggest was
Like
probably 40 inches, 30 by 40.
Sure.
This is 24, roughly, and the other one right after that that's between Southampton and Watermill.
And now that view is gone.
And there's one barn there that, I don't know if the barn is still there, but there's a housing development there.
Yeah.
And several housing developments. And they all have privet hedges.
I find that as a plein air painter, if I do come across something interesting to paint out in the East End, it's hard to even just park without getting a ticket.
Yes.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
very, not easy.
Yeah, or people come up behind you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Back then, you mentioned Mary Abbott and Fairfield Porter. Was there any, trading of paintings and you could get a Fairfield Porter back then kind of easily, or none of that? No.
No, it was just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
They were the only people I knew.
Did you get together for parties at least?
No.
No. Can you just make it up?
There were, there's a book by John Gruen called The Party's Over Now. And that kind of happened right before I got there. So, but that would give you a good impression of what was going on socially. But I was still a hermit.
Really?
I just wanted to go home at night. I didn't have a radio or a television
Wow.
in my 20s or my 30s.
Really?
I had a 45 RPM record player.
Right.
And I would play the Rachmaninoff concerto on 445s. So every 20 minutes it would go flop, flop.
So you would paint to music? You like doing that?
Always
That
painted
helps,
to
yeah.
music.
Were you a plein air painter? Did you do any of that?
No.
Because
one
could see that and say, yeah, I think.
did the pastels.
Yeah.
Always. And
Yeah.
the paintings went from the pastels and got more abstract in the studio.
Were you busy tuning into what other abstract painters were up to? Were you sort of aware of the art world? Did that influence you at all, or did you kind of just do your thing and
Not really.
you just did your thing? Yeah.
De Kooning was out there, more abstract than I
Right.
cared to be. The closest was Larry Rivers, who lived in Southampton. And he used a lot of imagery, like the cigar box covers with
Yeah, those guys.
the Rembrandt
Yeah.
heads and stuff.
Those guys.
But
Did you know Larry Rivers? Did you know him?
I met him a
You
few
met him?
times.
Yeah. Too bad.
Really?
No swinging parties. Jeez.
Huh?
No swinging parties. Oh well.
No
all right.
parties. No
Okay.
parties.
Well, that's all the time we have then. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So I think it might be interesting to tell the audience. So now it's entering like 69, 70, right? And there was a break in your painting career.
I did.
Now, why did you do that? You were going along so strongly here. What was the thinking?
Well, I'm still working part-time, right?
Right.
So I'm not making a living out of it. And I became fascinated with lute music and classical guitar. And a friend of mine had gone to Europe. She sang and played Joan Baez. And when she went to Europe, she left her acoustic guitar with me. And I didn't even know how to tune it. So I got a how-to book and taught myself really easy John Dowland stuff. They show you where to put your fingers and what to do. And I got totally hooked on it. I also decided to finish my bachelor's degree at Southampton College, which had just opened. They, at that time, did not have a teaching or an art program. They had humanities and science. So I took German, I took chemistry, I took botany, something on insects, and I wound up with enough credits for 3 bachelor's degrees because they didn't accept my teaching credits. So I had to take other stuff. And they finally gave me what they called a BA in humanities because I had all kinds of stuff but nothing consistent. But there was a guitar group at the college. And we had a little guitar quartet that got together and played now and then. And then I discovered a group in Huntington, and I gave a recital up there. And I would come home, I had a job in a bookshop, and I'd come home and I'd play the guitar for 4 hours a night.
Right.
And
So you did that for close to 10 years, right?
almost 10 years.
And
Yep.
then, but you also did music transcriptions for someplace in the city?
Later on, somewhere in there I got married.
Right.
When I was 35, I got married, and to a guy I met in Huntington at the Guitar Society. And where am I going with this?
Well, right, yeah. Let me see if I can help you out on that one. So you got married, and it lasted for about 5 years.
The music transcription, we were at CW Post, and I figured, well, maybe I could make a living doing something with music. And a violin teacher there referred me to a guy in the city named Darnie Ornstein, who would take scores from musicians of new music, and they needed parts for the orchestra.
Right.
And this stuff was before it was published. So I would take the score and extract the violin parts from the score for the violin, second violin, viola, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And you copy it out onto pages, and it gets reproduced. So I did that for a number of years.
I'm going to jump in. Oh, this is you.
Oh, that's going back to 1971. That's John McWhinney and myself. The painting behind us is one of my crazy abstracts, the most abstract that I ever did. Again, there were a lot of yellow paintings, which was kind of something I always did, a lot of yellow in my work.
Right. You could almost look at a painting, if you pulled it out of the racks and just based on the color scheme, you could say, okay, that was from the 70s.
Right.
Right, because you could see what you were thinking. I think if my timeline is correct with you, you decide you want to find out who your birth parents are.
Right.
And it's about this time.
That was when I got divorced.
Right. So you're like 35, 36, 37, 40, and you decide, okay, that's it. Let's see who I am. Where.
Yeah, there was a big movement at the time to find your birth parents.
Right.
And since I was born in Pennsylvania, my records were not sealed. So I wrote and I got the names of what I thought were my father and mother. My mother was Dutch and my father was Italian, and I figured, well, that fits right in with painting.
Yeah.
I drove to New Jersey and went to the library in Manasquan, and the woman there said, you should call this teacher. She taught school here for 50 years and knew everybody.
So this is Jersey or Pennsylvania?
Jersey.
Oh, Jersey, okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
And long story short, I found my birth mother, who then was living in Las Vegas.
Huh.
And a couple of years later, I went out by bus because I was afraid to fly.
Right.
To Las Vegas, and I met her. She had 4 other children.
Right.
One girl, Holly, who now is my best friend.
Yeah.
She had a younger son living with her who was painting paintings with lots of alizarin crimson and Prussian blue, which were my favorite colors,
Right.
and played guitar.
Wow.
Holly was and still is into photography. The older 2 brothers, which I didn't get to meet, were into target shooting,
And you were doing that
which
too.
was a hobby that my father encouraged.
Yeah.
I'm sure he didn't know about that, but that's one of my other hobbies. Later, I found my father's side of the family, and my sister there played guitar, and my brother was a cabinet maker and built, custom moldings and stuff. So that related to what I like to do very strongly.
So before we get into talking a little bit about the art, because I'd love to talk about that, just finding your family your birth parents?
Right.
What impact did that have on you as a person?
I wish I'd done it sooner.
Did it change you in some way?
It really grounded me.
Yeah.
I was always looking for an identity of sorts, which is why I think I became a guitarist instead of an artist. I looked around and I saw that artists were crashing their cars and drinking, and all the musicians I knew were classical musicians. So they had families who went to school and lived at home and learned music, and it was so conservative compared to the art people that it drew me toward it. When I was teaching, I was able to teach guitar because it was organized and structured, unlike art. So I joined the Eastern Suffolk School of Music in Riverhead, and Priscilla Bowden, who was a landscape painter, was teaching flute there. And she said to me in roughly 1980, why aren't you painting? Because we showed together 10 years earlier. So I said, you know, you're right. I think I'll go back to painting. So that was the end of the 10-year musician.
How did it feel picking up painting after that break?
Great, fantastic.
Felt like riding a bike, just got
really
right back
fantastic.
up. And,
Yeah.
Let's take a look at some of those paintings.
Yeah, this again, it relates to this, and it relates to the early landscapes in the Hamptons with the horizontal bars of color. And
did you find that when you moved over to, you got involved with the Spannerman Gallery, right?
right.
And that was a considerably big deal, I would
Well,
think.
out east, I went from Peter Luneman, Bridgehampton, Benson Gallery. I showed a lot there. And then I went to the Verret Gallery in East Hampton. And then she sold a lot of my work. Landscapes, very loose brushwork landscapes.
I have a question. Going from the Verret Gallery to Elaine Benson Gallery to this gallery,
Right.
sometimes gallery directors, they kind of feel like you should stick with them if they're going to represent
It wasn't that tight back then. And
Were there as many artists nowadays as there were, are there more artists nowadays than there were back then? Do you find that?
I think out there now there are more artists than there are people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, there must be 6 shows this weekend.
Yep,
And
that's true.
but there was a small group. Vera didn't show. She got way more abstract after I was with her. And so I left there and I went to Arlene Bouget's, who was also an abstract thing. And this was kind of too representational for her.
Right.
But Priscilla Bowden showed with her because they'd known each other for ages. So Arlene took my work and she sold quite a few of this kind of thing.
Can I go to the next one while we're here? Should we see?
Yeah. Right behind Arlene was another gallery. She's on Newtown Lane, and in the back is another big gallery space. And Spanierman Gallery from the city, Ira and his wife had a house in East Hampton. So they opened this space, and they invited me to show there with them. And Arlene was fine with that because it was more appropriate. Ira was very representational at that time.
So was your work being shown in the city as well?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
So they were in East Hampton for 3 or 4 years, and I showed with them regularly. Got really good reviews. One thing Ira always said, make them bigger, make them bigger. So this one is 60 by 70 inches.
How did you feel about working that large?
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
It's hard to be intimate when it's,
It may be why they're more representational.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
And I have a...
So there's a certain size that you like, that you feel comfortable at, right?
Well, because of where my garage, 2-car garage studio.
Yes.
And it's packed with 60 years of paintings.
Yes.
I mean, for every one you sell, you paint 12.
Yeah.
So you've seen it.
I've done it. I've seen it. It's impressive.
I still have this and a few others still in the cartons that came back from Spanierman, and they closed recently. He retired. But when they closed the one in East Hampton, they took all of my work to Manhattan. And I got to be an artist who showed in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Without ever having to go pound the pavement.
Yeah.
He did very well in Manhattan with my work.
Really? That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
So.
Oh, I have a question. So, when you look at your career, 1 minute you're having a nice show, this is going well, then that gallery closes, and this and that. How do you, now looking back on your career in selling paintings in the arts, how would you say you took all those ups and downs? Did it sort of?
I still work part-time, the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, if I
You never said, I'm cruising along great now.
I regret that I didn't.
Could you have done something differently and maybe pushed
I didn't
differently?
have the confidence to say,
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. I never had the self-confidence to say, I'm going to do this.
Right, and all that effort that goes into marketing and pushing oneself, that takes time away from painting, actually.
And I don't know how to do it. And I heard, from other artists, oh, my spouse does that for me.
Right.
She's the one that goes with the paintings to the galleries in the city.
Yeah.
And now, a lot of galleries now, one of them really liked my work, and we'd love to show your work. I'll send you a prospectus, $6,000 a year to be part of their gallery.
Oh boy, yeah. That's not going to work.
So they only take, instead of 50% commission, they only take 30 or 40.
Huh.
But they're still taking a commission.
Yeah.
And
that's hard.
And there's no more. It used to be postcards. You had to have 500 postcards printed every time you had a show.
Sure.
Now it's internet, and press releases, and the press comes anyway, so.
I find that you're pretty good with the email and the internet. You're not afraid of that.
Oh, God, I love it. When I was looking for images for these, anything before 1985 was like, it's in the attic in a box of slides somewhere.
Yeah.
And
forget it. Forget about that.
Yeah.
So
I love the internet.
Yeah. Now, materials can be expensive. Were you always painting on linen? Was that like a rule that you said, I'm going to just do that?
When I lived in Southampton, through someone I knew, I wound up with a small house that I lived in and used as a studio. And I put some paintings in the basement, and they were on cotton. And 6 months later, I went down and they had almost rotted away.
Oh my God.
Or one edge had rotted away.
Oh boy.
So, number one, I learned to be more careful.
Yeah.
And I started painting on linen, which is much more resistant to humidity and stuff.
Yeah.
Also 10 times more costly.
Right. Do you ever paint over paintings that weren't successful? Do you ever reuse?
Never.
Really?
Never.
Why not?
Part of it is that, if you resize, first of all, the sizing is water-based, so you can't resize them unless you use oil-based.
I mean, you could just paint right over the old painting.
But I can't, because there's an image there.
Oh boy.
I'd have to make it white again.
You would? Yeah, I guess you would.
Because
Okay.
I have an image in my head, and if I open my,
Yeah.
Plus, there's bumpiness here. So
Okay.
if your new image has something smooth here, you've got
That.
bumpy paint.
Yeah,
So,
I understand. Yeah.
It's just, and when I got older, there aren't too many that I want to paint over.
Right.
When I was younger, you could every other painting you made, you wanted to throw it away because
Yeah.
it didn't live up to your expectations.
Are you the kind of artist that took out the old clunkers when you were younger and burned them in the yard, and that was cathartic? And
No.
Yeah, okay, good.
As badly as I needed kindling, I never did that.
Let's look at the next slide, because I don't want to.
That's another one. It's 50 by 60 inches.
It's a Spannerman-ish
That was
time.
for Spanierman again.
All right, let's try another one.
It's Peconic Bay for Scythia, obviously.
Huh. And you would use maybe your memory as well as a pastel drawing to kind of launch into it.
Right.
Okay. Nice.
This is very recent. It's after the ones in this show. And this was a pastel sketch. Luckily, I was a passenger for a change, and these are headlights, and those are tail lights.
Wow.
And we were driving into the sunset, and there was snow on the ground. And this thing just haunted me. I think I drew it when we got home from memory.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
And when Spanierman closed, because these were so representational, I was very itchy to get back to abstract painting.
Yeah.
So the painting I did from this
There's this one here.
is this. And
Wow.
there's the headlights and the taillights and the colors from the sunset. And the little trees here and little trees there.
Let me ask the audience, doesn't this look like something fun to paint? Doesn't it look like something fun? Like, this,
Like fun?
it's all your own searching on the canvas. You're not having to render what you see.
No,
You're sort of feeling your
And
way
again,
through
it's
this.
all, the reason we call this life in color is
Yeah.
that's the thing. I pulled the colors out of the painting, the snow and the sky and the greenery, but I don't know, I just like playing with it.
So how do you know when you're done? When you're working on an abstract painting, how do you know, hey, it's time for me to stop? If I could put down some more strokes, but maybe that might break something.
That's really the hard part,
It is, isn't it?
when to stop.
Yeah.
And
Because you could crash a certain passage and then not get back to what you had. It was better.
you can go too far.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible feeling because you can't fix it.
Yeah.
You cannot fix that.
But tell me about the feeling you have after you paint that. You just put the paints down, you clean it, and you look at it.
No, you're not sure.
You're not, right?
No, no.
Because you've gone out on the thin part of the creative ice. You're on your own out there.
Yeah. But, you always come out the next day and look at it.
Yeah.
And
And the little painting elves come out at night. I know that. And they fix things. And all of a sudden you go, wow, that's not so bad, right?
and sometimes
I still drink, I guess I should. No, I'm just, all right, we'll
I
edit
can't, I
that.
can't remember who it is, but a friend of mine says, I like to paint like that, but I come out the next day and I say, oh, that's awful. And I said, well, the problem is you have to come out and say it's awful and then keep working
Until you can say it's not awful.
for maybe the next 25 days. And
How long would this painting take to paint? I mean, I'm sure this didn't just fall out in one session. Maybe?
A couple of weeks, maybe.
Okay. Of noodling with it, looking at it. In this painting, we have one artist here who might even like to know this question. What was the first stroke on a white canvas that you made for that painting?
I don't remember.
You
I don't-
have to make this stuff up. No, all right.
I don't remember.
Is there a slide after this? Let's see. Oh, there's this.
That's very recent. It's a landscape, obviously. I was driving along in Cutchogue, and they use a clover as a cover crop that's bright red. It's about 2 feet high. It has a huge clover blossom. And this whole edge of this field was bright red. And I would still like to make kind of a realistic landscape out of that. But it just took me away with it.
It went this way.
And I didn't know, I couldn't find, I took photos and I cut small pieces of clover and brought them home with me, which I do a lot.
Really?
And I like to find out the Latin name for the plant that I'm involved with. And I went to a Facebook page called Plant Identification 101. And I posted the picture, and he said it's Trifolium incarnatum, which is the name for red clover.
Okay.
And then, God bless you, the next day, all the garden places that sold seeds for this cover crop were posting on my screen.
Really?
It's like if you search for a vehicle,
yeah,
the next day you get ads.
Yeah.
It's astounding, you know.
Yeah, I once heard I read there was a gallery in the city, and the director of the gallery was interested in artists who had their own language, that their paintings, that these artists created their own visual language. And when I look at this painting, I feel that way. And the nice part about this painting is that it's not, yeah, I've seen this kind of abstract before. It's your abstract, which is what makes it work for me. Is that
hopefully, yeah.
You know, and I think it's your language that I get to enjoy and try to decipher, and it's nice.
And again, color is the jumping off point. That's what makes me put on the brakes. And
do you think about light, or is it only color? Do you ever let light become part of the issue?
Not in terms of light and shadow.
No, right. No. Okay. So it's just
know,
color.
One of Steve Cassell's thing was light and dark, light and dark.
Do you think much about composition? Do you have any rules that you follow concerning composition and design?
Yeah,
as to what
they're subconscious though.
Okay. So if something goes here, maybe you need something here.
Yeah.
You just sort of do it, right?
Susan Rothenberg is a great painter, moved out west. And she said, even if you're not going to paint, go out in the studio and read a book. And you will look up at your painting and you'll say, God, that's awful, I need to fix that. And that's how it happens.
And that's what you do?
And she said, you know, if you're in your living room and you're reading the book, that's not going to happen. You have to be in front of the canvas.
Right.
So force yourself to get out in the studio and sit with the painting, even if you're not picking up a paintbrush.
Were you the kind of artist that painted every day religiously? Like, were you doing that pretty much?
No.
Really?
No. I wish I could. I don't have a lot of energy, and you know, I do my own lawnmower maintenance and grounds maintenance.
Right.
And
repair your car. I've seen
I repair my car and my truck, and
This isn't a painting. This is a palette. Although it's for sale, if you think
Sometimes-
it's a painting. Which we have a great deal on it.
sometimes when I look at these at the end of the day,
You
I
like
say,
them.
Oh wow, I love that.
Yeah.
You know?
Can you
And
collage them? Can you mess with them and cut them up and paste them? And
de Kooning did that.
yeah,
And some artists have done that.
yeah.
I, I may.
You may.
know?
But by showing this is, instead of putting out every rainbow color that
Right.
you have, you just say, I need this,
Yeah.
this to get in here.
Yeah. This was the start of, we went to a picnic for sheepdogs in Massachusetts, and I walked the dog in a vacant lot, and they had these little wildflowers that grow on long stems, a little bright blue flower. And I got that in my head,
Yeah.
and I did a little 12-inch painting of that.
Huh.
So this was kind of how I started out.
With your vision of the landscape getting filled up with houses and no parking
Right,
signs,
yeah.
do you find as an artist that my view now is focusing in on smaller landscapes, flowers, and
Yes,
tighter visions?
Definitely.
And you like it, right?
Another funny thing, I had my cataracts done about 3 years ago. And a lot of my more realistic landscapes focus on great distance,
Yeah.
and what's on the horizon. And I found that I was focusing on the field in the foreground and not looking up and out.
Yeah.
And then when I had the cataract surgery, I was looking, I said, oh my God, you know, it was so dramatic.
Did your colors change? Did you after the cataracts were fixed? Did your color sense change?
Color didn't change
No,
at
it didn't
all.
change. Okay.
And I think that the impetus to going back to abstract was when Spanierman closed, I didn't have an outlet for the realistic landscapes. And I said, oh, now's the time to do my thing.
Yeah.
I'm retired, I'm gonna paint for myself, and let's see where I can go with this.
Right.
So that's
Would you say this is like one of the more exciting times for you creatively?
it is, yeah.
Yeah, good.